Alrighty, how you doing? So, today's video, first of all, I apologize. I know this is a crappier webcam. I don't have access to my usual webcam right now, so I'm going to have to make do. Um, this one is about the dumb way we keep teaching kids music in this country. Now, to start off, by the way, I'm sick again. This is the second time I've made a video like this, and I'm not feeling good, so pardon my voice. Um, the uh, what I mean by saying that the music education is dumb is we're teaching kids music that doesn't relate to them whatsoever. The idea that music class really provides anything valuable to kids today is kind of ridiculous, and I think that's a big part of the reason why they don't want to fund it. People say, "Oh, what good is it if you learn the tuba, or what good is it if you learn the violin?" Most 99% of kids aren't going to be in classical ensembles when they get out of school, and some will, and they make a contribution, no question, to the musical history, and gives you a chance to go see classical music, which is great. But to make the lion's share of the focus of music class on basically two things. One, I like to do this finger thing if you don't know if you know. One is classical music. Two is jazz. That's it. Big ensembles, classical music and jazz. And, classical music, I like classical music a lot. I'm a big fan of a lot of, Beethoven, huge fan of Beethoven, huge fan of Chopin. I like the Romantic period especially. I've listened to a lot of classical music in my day. But most kids are not served by being taught classical music. Um, Classical music is a rigid discipline. It's not easy. It's very difficult music if you want to sound good. There are basic songs you can play to sound good, but most people are going to quit by the time they get to anything remotely intermediate because the demands it makes on you as a player are pretty intense. You have to have really solid technique before you can start sounding good. And everyone has heard that learning classical music student who just sucks on their instrument. It's not fun for other people in the house. It's not really fun for the students. The student thinks, well, how long am I going to have to make this horrible music? And if you're one of the, people who's especially motivated, you love classical music, you love to play, then you'll probably figure it out eventually. But even those people who love it, few of them are going to end up choosing it as a profession. And for those that don't choose that as a profession, very few are even going to get a chance to play in a live setting for other people, which is what the point of learning to play an instrument is, playing for other people. And it just seems to me like, why are we teaching kids music from 200 years ago, 300 years ago? It's patently ridiculous. I'm not saying any kids. Like I said, I value classical music, but different kids are going to be into different things, and your introduction to music training is to be put in a class where they give you a choice of, well, do you want to play the violin, the cello, clarinet, the usual classical instruments, and that's it. And you're playing a limited range of music, and if you don't particularly enjoy it, and if you're not particularly good at it, then you're probably going to quit within a year or two. And that's how most people become musically stupid, really. Most people have no musical sophistication. They like things that are very basic, that don't require real virtuosity to play. Music becomes more based around image, less based around both ability as an actual player and ability as a songwriter. And I think that's a shame, and I think we're seeing the results of that now. Music, I think, now has been in a more dismal state than it ever has been. It's totally corporatized. The art portion of it is almost entirely gone. Most modern music is more about coming up with a sound that's cool rather than something that's meant to be, artistically pioneering. And And that's, it's disappointing, and really it's a sad time to be alive as a music fan, I believe. And I say that from a person who doesn't just, there's a lot of people who are older who say, oh, the music today sucks. I realize that. I like a lot of different music from a lot of different eras. I like music from the 30s, I like music from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, up into maybe some of the grunge from the 90s, and that's about where I drop off. There's some rap that's decent. I like rap that tends to have a decent musical background. The beats, as they're often called, I believe. And very few rap songs really have a great background these days. It's all very sort of, they all echo each other. It's almost like the echo chamber of rap music. There was a certain point where it was like, hey, 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 hey. That became the thing, and like every third hip hop or rap track or whatever it is featured that. Every third, rap track in the 90s featured that high synthesizer. I don't know if it was like I think it was one of those siny sort of sounds. And you see that in other things, electronic music. There's like the breakdowns are always the same. People always talk about the breakdowns, and it's just kind of like one breakdown sounds a lot like the other breakdown. People are all using. In fact, a lot of people in electronic music are using synthesizers from the 80s, so it's kind of weird. It's like what's old became new again. But enough of that tangent. Basically, what needs to happen is when they teach music to people, they need to allow people freedom within the world of music. Now, maybe the powers that be are afraid of artistry because they know it's dangerous. Good artistry makes people question the system a lot of times. Good artistry tends to be sort of contrarian to popular or trends, which is things that are easily packaged, things that are designed for the lowest common denominator. And so maybe they don't want that. I don't know. This is sort of a conspiracy theory. Maybe they don't want that level of thought. But I really think it's just a matter of people who are in control of the musical education have no deep appreciation for music. Most of these people are on the school board, and they didn't get on the school board by being musicians most of the time. They got on the school board by being educators, probably, subjects other than music, because it's probably hard to get on the school board as a music teacher because, you may not be paid as well. Your job is a tenuous one. Your division could get cut at any time if the school's experiencing problems. So first off, the big problem obviously is funding. You need to have enough funding to have a dynamic musical education offered to the youth of America. And second of all is you give kids the chance to choose what kind of music they want to make. And it shouldn't just be big band jazz and classical music. They should have practice rooms at schools. This is where the funding part comes in. And they should be able to break up a music class into either small ensembles, i.e. bands, or maybe allow people to write their own music with a sequencer, something like that. A lot of kids like electronic music these days. Why not let kids write electronic music in music class? In high school, I'm talking. I know that you can do this my friend responded by saying, well, you can do this in college. I'm like, yeah, but by the time you get to college, you haven't had the opportunity to develop your musical skills to a point that you can be competitive in the marketplace. I hate to use those terms because it's so capitalistic, but in this situation, it applies. You have to start young at musicianship, whatever you're going to do, if you're going to be, if you're going to play music or make music that people want to hear. So, ideally, music class is, all right, here's how we separate you. You want to play classical music? We put you with the classical. In fact, they could probably a matter of electives, most likely, because band's already an elective. This is another thing. The funding is just completely crap, There's no funding. There's enough funding for two music classes, classical and band. That's pathetic. You need one class that's the, high school sequencer class. Learn how to use Pro Tools. Learn how to use, I don't know, whatever. whatever software that they're using other than Pro Tools. Something like Pro Tools is kind of industry standard. You learn how to do recording engineering. You know, analyze. You know how people learn recording engineering. And and you write, you know, your own music, electronic. And the great thing about it is, you know, let's say you were writing your own music. Well, if you were writing your own music and you decided, well, I want to write music, I want to use a sequencer, but I don't want to write electronic music. I want to use real musicians. Well, on the other side, you could have, you know, another class. I feel like these classes should all be integrated. You know, while you could call it different electives, they should all be taught in the same basic large space, and with the option to break off to separate spaces. And for the other, for you know, you could have then the other side of it would be the band side of it. You know, let's say you wanted to write music, but you didn't want to use a sequencer. You just wanted to teach your songs to a band and play it that way. Ideally, it would be all together. You know, you if you wanted to play in a band, you'd still have to learn to use the sequencer. If you wanted to use the sequencer, you still have to work with live musicians. That way, you'd get a more well-rounded approach. And you could even bring the classical musicians in. You know, there's a lot of great electronic music that has, you know, classical music embedded into it. I've written some myself. I wouldn't call it great, but I haven't written enough to really get enough practice. But or you could, you know, bring in the jazz band if you wanted a jazz element in your electronic music, which is also cool. Or you could mix them all, you know. But you know, then you'd have the band side where, you know, you'd have you know, guitar teacher, piano teacher, drum teacher, bass teacher, maybe, you know, any other instrument you might think belongs in a band. Try to get people who are you know, multi-talented, multi-instrumentalists. And you teach kids to do that. And basically, you know, you would have a hotbed of creativity for new music, create you know, new ideas, stuff that people actually want to listen to. And you know, it's a damn shame that this doesn't exist. They probably have schools, you know, specialty schools that might allow you to go somewhere in this direction. Maybe this is something that would be hard to get the government to pay for because you need, you know, a pretty large space. I mean, I would recommend doing it in, like, you know, it would almost be like if you built an auditorium. You'd have an auditorium, and then you could have, you know, walls on the side for the side practice rooms or something like that. I don't think it would be too hard because they do it at my local community college, and you know, it seems to work out pretty well. They have one room for sequencing. They have other rooms for bands to practice in. They have other rooms for classical musicians to practice in. You get the idea. Every high school in America, I think, or even every junior high school, should have a complex like that, a musical complex specifically, because, you know, we're missing out on a lot in terms of music. You look at, you know, what people listen to, and it's almost like everyone's listening to the same playlist we've had since the 60s, 50s, forever. You know, people don't listen to as much 40s music as they used to these days, maybe jazz. But when it comes to rock music, you know, everybody's listening to the same songs that were released in the late 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. You know, it's like this perpetual loop of like maybe 1,000 songs, 2,000 songs, something like that, that everybody's heard a billion times, and we just keep hearing it over and over again. You know, there could be so much great new music created if we invested in a dynamic musical education that allowed kids to pick their path, you know, that allowed kids to be excited about what they're learning. Because most kids are not going to be excited about classical music, and most kids are not going to be excited about jazz music. And it's a damn shame that this didn't exist when I was younger, because I probably, you know, I played clarinet in the 3rd grade. I think I played about, you know, 5 practices, and then we did a concert. I was terrible at the concert. I didn't feel like I knew what I was doing. I wasn't really cut out for reading music, you know, and I quit. And I wish I hadn't, because, you know, if I'd started by the time I was starting clarinet in 3rd grade, if I'd started something that would have been more interesting to me, probably drums. I probably would have gone for the drums, because when I was little, I always wanted to play drums. I could be a great drummer right now. And even if it didn't amount to anything, even if I never wrote a song, even if I never had a band that was successful, at the very least, I would have like top-level chops. And anytime I was at a party, you could expect there to be 4 or 5 people that had top level jobs instead of making do with people who were amateurs because they weren't really able to start practicing until they were, later in life because they weren't encouraged in the proper direction at a young age. So yeah, let's. I'd like to. I know it's never going to happen, so it's really more of a philosophical rambling as usual. But music education in America is broken. I don't know if it's broken overseas, but I imagine it is. I have seen, there's this one video of a guy who teaches his kids to play Led Zeppelin on the xylophone, and that's pretty cool. But again, you're not going to see tons of people playing Led Zeppelin on the xylophone, in making albums and going to the top of the charts, or even, most people aren't really going to necessarily pay to go see Led Zeppelin on xylophone. So, let's give these kids a chance to make some real music. Imagine the creativity that lies dormant in so many teenagers. Teenagers experience a lot of the same angst that we do, and it's even more magnified because school is such a tough time. Imagine if they had a creative outlet to release all that negative and positive emotion. We'd end up with a hell of a lot more great music, and we'd end up with people who had a much more deep and meaningful appreciation of music in general. And it would be a musical bonanza for the world.